Hello and welcome to InSight, CCTV showcase of local nonprofits working hard to make a difference in our community. Thank you for joining us today. I am host Wendy Brokaw, and with me is co-host Louise VanNatta. And we have two very special guests with us today, Chief Executive Officer Allison Kelly of Liberty House and the City of Salem's Deputy Police Chief Jim Ferreras. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure.
Today's focus is on our community's youngest victims, victims of abuse, all kinds of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect. This is a big problem because every year there are over 1,000 confirmed victims of child abuse right here in Marion and Polk counties. And for over 15 years, Liberty House has been a beacon of hope for these children and their families, delivering assessment services in a child-friendly, neutral setting. But much more can be done, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be taking you on a video tour of Liberty House, and we're going to talk about abuse and its impact, about how Liberty House helps and how Liberty House is a resource for those dealing with problems such as human trafficking, which is a global problem with, sadly, a reach right here in our own community. But best of all, there is a way forward that is truly exciting. Liberty House's newest project called Nurturing Growth and Hope. So let's begin right away. I think our audience would really like to know, what are we talking about when we say child abuse? What is child abuse?
That's a great question, Wendy, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here. When we think of child abuse, I think you said it a little earlier, we think of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, things that create harm to children that really can have a long-lasting effect. And when we think about it, when information comes to light that a child or a teen may have been the victim of abuse or neglect, there's some things that need to happen, like finding out what happened and who was involved and what kind of effect that might be having on the young person. And to do that, we need to have the appropriate authorities involved in most cases. And we also want to have people involved who have had special training, because that process of finding out what the child might have gone through can be a very important first step to get on a path toward where those experiences don't have a negative effect on the child. We hope that at some point that child will move to a place of greater wellness and health and security so they can live the life they want to live. But some things need to happen before that point.
And it all begins in a way of getting the child to tell their story, but they don't always tell their story, right? They don't.
That's right. And in some cases there are people in the life of a child telling them not to tell for various reasons, and that really can create a huge amount of distress. And we also know that sometimes, even when the right circumstances are there, that the information comes out in bits and pieces, and it doesn't always make sense. And so it's very important to make sure that the children don't feel like they're being punished or coerced or in any way made to feel ashamed.
That word child abuse goes right straight to the heart of another problem that law enforcement is well familiar with. What is the law enforcement perspective on abuse, which actually involves something that is a catchword now? It's called human trafficking. What are we talking about here? What kind of abuse is that?
Well, really, Wendy, we're talking about the sexual and physical exploitation of children and adults when we talk about human trafficking. It often involves prostitution. It can involve an international reach. It can involve a national reach. We've had a variety of cases throughout Oregon, some right here in Salem. There was one in 2012, if I remember correctly, where we had a man and a woman who were selling images of children involved in sexual exploitation on the internet. And between the work of the Salem police and the federal authorities, we were able to arrest those offenders, and they're both in prison, and those children have been placed into proper care where they can get the appropriate attention that they need to recover from that exploitation. Much of the human trafficking that we see in Salem is underground. It's advertised on the internet, on various websites, It involves the use of hotels and escort services, and it really is a problem because it's difficult for people to see, and if they don't see it, they don't understand it. So that becomes a challenge for us.
Are you saying this happens in Salem?
It-
It's so surprising to me.
It certainly does. While it's more prolific in larger cities like Portland and Seattle and Los Angeles and San Francisco, being on the interstate here in I-5 makes Salem really a prime place for transshipment of victims from one locale to another, which is really disturbing, and it's much of a concern to law enforcement here in our area.
Well, what is a parent to do? How do they even know that their child might even be a potential victim?
Well, parents need to pay attention to their children. We're all parents, and we all have children, and knowing who your child's friends are, looking at their social media sites, watching Facebook, looking at their cell phones, going into their bedroom, having a relationship with your child where you can communicate with your child. If your young daughter or son says they're going to the mall, or they're going shopping, or they're going to another city, Portland for instance, to go to one of the malls, who are they going with? What are they going to be doing? Is a parent taking them, and is a parent picking them up? Is your child receiving emails or phone calls or text messages from an adult? Those are all red flags that parents need to pay attention to, so they can get at the front end of this, because children are vulnerable. They're very vulnerable. And these folks who are involved in human trafficking are pros at exploiting our youth. And kids are innocent, and they believe things, and they believe what's told to them. So we really need to pay attention to that, so we don't find folks interacting and exploiting our kids.
What role have you played working with Liberty House? Where do you work with Liberty House?
Personally, I work as an advocate for Allison, and as a partner with Allison and other folks involved in child abuse prevention and enforcement at the district attorney's office and social service agencies. But really the work's done by the detectives who work for the Salem Police Department and the police officers who are taking the calls for service that actually start the investigation when a call of child abuse or sex abuse comes in to the police department's attention. So we have a cadre of detectives who are specially trained in child abuse, and some of our officers as well. So that's where our partnership is, working with the medical professionals at Liberty House, the social service professionals at Liberty House, and using the facilities of Liberty House. It's a pretty scary thing for a child to be interviewed by a police officer in a setting that doesn't feel safe. So imagine if you're a young child and you're the victim of sexual abuse or physical abuse, and a police officer is trying to interview you at 3 o'clock in the morning in a 10-by-8 bedroom in an apartment when the suspect is in the next room. It's going to be pretty scary for a child. So having a safe environment, an environment that a child can thrive in and feel comfortable and safe in, for that conversation to take place, whether it's with the investigator or the investigator observing, while a trained medical professional does that forensic examination, that interview with that child, is key to the success of getting the evidence we need to prosecute that offender, so children can't be hurt any longer.
Allison, before we take a look at a video, which I would like you to tell us a little bit about before we do, Mary Louise, I can't imagine how terrifying it would be to be a child with grown-ups that you don't know, who suddenly are taking you seriously with a complaint that you have or something you've said. What's going on in that child's mind, do you think? Based on your experience, are they blaming themselves? What's going on?
It will vary from experience to experience, but it's common for children to have had their power taken away by people telling them not to tell, by people threatening them, by people verbally heaping insults and those kinds of emotional wounds. That can cause a child to feel very powerless. So one thing that we'll see when we go through the video tour of Liberty House is that not only is the environment child-friendly, but the pace is child-friendly. We explain everything to the child. We show them the rooms. We let them see where they're going to be and with whom they'll be speaking. And we let them know that it's okay to ask questions and it's okay to say, I don't know. We let them know that if at any point they feel like they are ready to stop, then we will stop. We let them engage in shaping how that appointment goes, and that is a method of giving them their power back. It gives them a little bit of a voice. What that does is help children to learn to trust that this experience in talking with these authorities will be different. And we are very appreciative of our law enforcement partners and our partners at the Oregon Department of Human Services. These are agencies that are there to help. Liberty House serves Marion and Polk counties, and so we work with all the law enforcement agencies in both counties, the sheriff's offices and all of the police departments. And these are seasoned professionals that we're very grateful for.
That's so interesting, and I've had a number of opportunities, as you know, to go through Liberty House and take a tour. I've been a part of the public tours, and what struck me is the environment is confidential, because so they will only see one family in the morning and one family in the afternoon. Is that
That's
correct?
Right.
So that really is at the child's pace, and so the tours are open to the public. Is that right? Organized tours?
We do. We give 2 tours a month, and we love being able to bring people into the facility and explain, because what we are offering is a coordinated response, and that coordination means that the child will have to tell his or her story fewer times.
Right.
And that creates less trauma. That's the whole point.
So the environment, while it's confidential, it's not secret, is it?
That's right.
And
We say there are no secrets at Liberty House.
and
Say that again.
No secrets at Liberty House.
Why do you say that?
Because of this environment, we often see children coming from where secrets are part of what holds them captive to experiences. And we don't always know. I think it's really important to emphasize that our services and our approach are neutral and objective. So in some cases, when children are referred to Liberty House for an assessment, it's the opinion of our team, our professionals, that there are no indicators that abuse has occurred. There may be some other things going on, but that's part of the value of this. That way, when our professionals meet with the children, the other partners working in that situation can be very confident that the information that comes out will be able to be relied on, that will be valid.
I think it's about time we took a trip to Liberty House.
Yeah.
What do you
That'd be
think?
great.
I know. What are we going to see on this tour, Allison?
I don't want to spoil it for you.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
You may see some really warm, compassionate people. That's the only thing I'm going to say.
I got really lucky that you had some wonderful people there to help us go through and just take us on a little tour of this rather beautiful place in a rather beautiful setting. Let's go there.
Welcome to Liberty House. We're glad you're here. This is what children and families hear when they first come in these doors. Children can wait in this room and play with the toys. As you can see, there are plenty of toys to play with. It's cozy and friendly, welcoming. Children find plenty to do while they're waiting. There is another room attached to the playroom that we call the quilt room, and this is where we meet with parents for family support. Every child that comes to Liberty House is invited to take a quilt home with them just for showing up. The quilts are donated by many different women around the community. They're all beautiful and we're very grateful to have them. I was speaking with a young girl recently that she had chosen her quilt a little bit early and she wrapped it around her and kept herself warm and cozy throughout her entire interview. Some of the children who come here have been through some pretty tough situations. So when they first come in, they see this whole hallway full of bears and we invite them to choose one. We hope that it offers children some comfort, something to hold on to while we're talking with them here at Liberty House. So all the kids that come get to pick out one of the bears and take it home with them. This beautiful screen here, along with the art, is right in front of our exam room. Everything that we have here, we hope provides some beauty and comfort to all the children and families who come. I'd like to introduce you to one of our examiners, Dr. Erin Hurley. Hi, Dr. Hurley. Do you have a minute?
Hi, I do.
Good. Can you tell us about the exam room?
I can.
Great.
So this is our checkup room at Liberty House. We try our best to provide an environment that's warm and friendly and has things in it that kids will recognize as a doctor's office. We can check eyes and ears. We can check their heights and weights. When kids come here, sometimes they're worried about going to the doctor's office. The great news here, we don't have shots, no pokes, no owies, nothing should hurt. It can be difficult to talk about getting hurt or being in an abusive situation. So our office staff is specially trained to talk to kids about these things. We know it can be tough, and yet we're okay listening to that. And we don't judge kids, and we provide an environment where we hope they can feel comfortable talking to someone who knows all about this stuff.
When information comes to light that a child has been abused in some form, then certain things need to happen. And one of those things is a place for children to come and talk about what's happened to them. So the room where we do that at Liberty House is right here. So when we're talking with kids, we come in and sit at this table. There are pictures to color, and we have a relaxed conversation about life. Children don't always tell us everything all at once. They have their own process, and we always want to honor that process for them. So we want to approach children in a developmentally appropriate manner and go at their own pace. Some children want to be done before we are, and if that's the case, we honor that. We honor their process and thank them for coming and talking with us. When their visit is just about over, we meet with parents again to answer any additional questions and to offer our recommendations. After that, we say goodbye to the children back here in the playroom. A member of our team always follows up with families in a week or two to see if there's any other way we can be of help. I've been at Liberty House for 15 years, and it never ceases to amaze me how resilient children are. Many times I've heard children tell me how much better they feel after they've talked about what's happened to them and how they feel like a weight has been lifted off of their shoulders, or the bricks are gone from their chest, or the water has just rolled off of their back. One child said that their heart felt better.
Wow, that's really moving. I got chills when she was saying that. I just
It's a wonderful
made
video.
my heart feel better. Oh.
Well, Allison, though, with after seeing the video and after being there myself and knowing that we have 1,100 confirmed cases of abuse in Marion Polk County, how are we able to accommodate these kids?
That's a very good question. Not all of those 1,100 cases need to be seen at Liberty House, but there are many children that we are not able to see each year. Liberty House will never be a substitute for the emergency department, and at the same time, there are some children who need to be seen promptly, more promptly than we are able to fit into our schedule. Our board and our staff have wrestled with these issues for years, and this year we've had some exciting new developments and are positioned to actually do something about that space.
There's a great story you said that involves walking across a lawn. Tell us about it.
Well, we have some wonderful neighbors in the area where Liberty House is located, and one of our neighbors owns a building that is adjacent to ours, and our lawns connect. And so early in the year, I walked across the lawn and sort of invited myself into a question of asking whether it might ever be a possibility to purchase their building. And the answer to that was yes. And so we are in conversations with those owners and have narrowed a set of range of what we'll need to be able to make that happen. And if we can make that happen, then we will be able to move our non-clinical services from our original building and create space for additional exam rooms and interview rooms at Liberty House.
That's something you like, don't you?
Oh, that's exciting.
I do, and from a partnership standpoint, and I reflect back on the many years I spent, nearly 30 years with the Portland Police Bureau, and I oversaw the Child Abuse Investigations Unit and the team in Portland for a number of years. And we had, our answer in Portland to Liberty House was CARES Northwest. And I was actually able to assign an officer and a detective full-time to that unit to be able to triage cases as they came in the door. And that's my hope here, is that if we had the appropriate space and the appropriate office facilities and interview rooms to be able to be on site on a regular basis, on a daily basis, then we could assign an officer or a detective to Liberty House full-time to be there on intake.
Wouldn't that be an asset to the community?
It'd be great. And you think about how, what a boon that would be for collecting evidence, for gaining the information necessary to prosecute these offenders, to be able to work with our Liberty House partners, social service partners, our district attorney partners. We'd be able to serve our children and their families to a much greater degree than we do now.
You know, I think when you mentioned families, I think that's a really important point to remember. Families who are in the middle of managing things that are going on draw a great deal of strength from the confidence of our team when we work together with our law enforcement partners and our other agency partners. That working together, that coordination gives them confidence to move to the next step. We had one family write back to us some time ago saying, thank you for all of the work because you gave us strength to navigate this very difficult time.
Well, isn't it true, Allison, that after families are dealing with this issue for a while, it's just not over after their first assessment?
Exactly.
That's an excellent point. We recommend follow-up mental health services in over 95% of the cases that we see. And at the current moment, we can't make an easy handoff to those services. And so with the acquisition of this property, we will be able to partner with local mental health specialists who provide care for both child victims and their family members and make that a little easier. We're just beginning to explore those possibilities.
But I kind of get the feeling that what would happen is that instead of saying, thank you very much for coming, oh, you're going to need an appointment, what could you say that would be better?
We could say, thank you very much for coming, and we're glad that you want some follow-up support. Let's go down the hall and get scheduled. I think we can see you back later this week.
It's really exciting from that aspect too. When you think about offenders in these types of situations are often part of a family, a trusted person, a person trusted by the family, or a family member. Think about the fracturing within the family and just the upheaval of that family unit, and those folks need support. And if we can provide that in this environment, that's a win-win, not only for the child victim, but for the family as well.
Well, it sounds like you have an exciting but challenging road ahead of you in the next few months.
We do.
Now, have you named this project?
We have a name for the project. The project is called Nurturing Growth and Hope. And we do feel, we've seen over 5,000 victims in the last 15 years, and we do feel that for those lives that we've touched, that we've hopefully been able to instill some hope. And so the growth is about being able to grow the facility and the program and our partnerships, and then the hope, hopefully we'll be offering hope for families.
What about words I've heard you say about maybe a garden or something that would be even more enhancing, and also a walkway? What were you talking about?
There is a lawn between the two buildings. And we've had people ask, do families ever let their children play on the lawn? And the answer is yes, they do, especially if they're from out of town and they just need a place to recreate before their appointment begins, or if they're taking a break. And people will ask us, have you ever thought about maybe putting in a healing garden or a therapy garden? And the answer to that question is yes, we have. And then people will say, that would be a very inviting space, a peaceful space for people to take a break. And the answer to that is yes, it would. So we are hoping that this project will inspire some creativity and some goodness among all of the agencies and all of the personnel who've been working on these issues for years. And I would just say hats off to all of our detectives and investigators and leaders and people at the Department of Human Services, our schools, all of these partners. It's not easy work to do. It's pretty grim work. And so to be able to support each other and to develop an exciting vision feels good. We want to move that forward.
How should people respond? That's the one thing people want to know. I never want to be in this situation, but give us a quick sketch of what you think people should do. You tell people.
Yeah, and with the statistics, we know that across the country, 1 in 10 children will be victims of sexual abuse alone before they turn 18. So that means that any one of us will know people and could be confronted by a situation in which a child says something to us that we were not expecting to hear. And in our need to make that child feel better, it's easy to accidentally say something like, "Oh, you don't mean that," or "That couldn't possibly happen." We really like to encourage people not to say that. Maybe if they don't know what to say in the moment, just to respond with an open, "Ah, okay." And then I'll turn it over to Jim. I think what we want to be able to say is if there's a child who is experiencing abuse that may be viewing this, that child should feel free to call 911. We have a hotline. With that, what would you say?
No, I agree with that completely, and just stepping back a little bit on how people should deal with potential child victims is not ask questions, not get in depth. Save that for the professionals. Even our police officers, really we suggest that police officers who are not trained in the specialty of interviewing a child don't conduct an interview, that they save that for the professionals, the detectives who are trained, the officers who are trained, and our partners at Liberty House. And we hope to take that child to Liberty House to be able to do that interview. But if there's a child who's watching or a parent who's concerned, if there's suspected abuse in a household, they can call the Marion County Child Abuse Hotline, and they can also call 911. If somebody's in danger right now, call 911 and we'll sort it out. We'll get a police officer there, and one of the responding agencies will check it out. We mandate our officers to respond to any call of those types of incidents. So call 911 and the police will investigate.
Or at least get you to the proper,
absolutely.
Get
Or
you to the
some
proper
referral.
place.
Right.
So you don't
Some
have to
referral.
memorize a lot of phone numbers.
Exactly.
You just need to know that you're, someone will be there to help you if you yourself have
Right.
issues.
If
you
somebody's
wanna talk
being
about.
hurt, call us. We'll be there.
We're out of time, unfortunately. We're going to have you back. This is too important a subject to leave just right here, but we've covered a lot of ground today. Quickly, how does somebody get in touch with your campaign, with your project, and also with Liberty House?
We have the website, libertyhousecenter.org. We welcome people to call Liberty House, 503-540-0288. And we are happy to hear from you. We'd love to have you on a tour, and you can click on the events tab on our website and get a calendar of upcoming tours.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's
Thank you.
program.
Oh, thank you for having us.
It's
Thank
been
you.
very, very informative. And thank you for joining us today on InSight. This is a wonderful way to learn much more about Liberty House today, and I'm so glad you could join us. Thank you.